Hi, and welcome to the Team Deacons podcast. This podcast is a dialogue between Roger and James Deacons, joined by Matt Wyman, starting from a submitted question and ending who knows where. We're also joined by guests on occasion. We're connecting through Zoom, so bear that in mind when you hear the audio. If you'd like to submit a question, please do so by emailing pod@rogerdeacons.com. We're pleased today to have with us a director known to you all. He's a great friend, which adds to the pleasure of working with him. We've collaborated on 3 movies with him and have had a lot of fun along the way. A few of his titles are Incendie, Prisoners, Sicario, Arrival, and Blade Runner 2049. And of course, we're all impatiently awaiting his film, Dune. We're very happy to welcome a magnificent director and a good friend, Denis Villeneuve. Denis, thank you.
Thank you, James. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you very much.
Can you just start it out with telling us what your path was, how you ended up where you are today?
I will try to be brief. I studied film in Montreal. At the end of that study, I felt that I learned how to put a camera on a tripod and to lit on stage, but I felt the urge to bring the camera in the streets and outside, and I did something that was very important in my studies, which was to spend half a year around the world alone with a digital camera, doing documentaries for a French branch of CBC called Radio-Canada. So I spent 7 months alone doing every week a short film of 5 minutes, a little essay with total freedom. And those short films were aired on the prime time on national TV. It was like a kind of little competition between 8 people between 18 and 25 years old. And I had the chance to participate to that. And that was very, very one of the greatest experience as a film student, because I really learned how to approach a subject with a camera alone, being in the intimacy with the camera and a subject, and to learn about light too, and to learn about storytelling too, because the documentary is a fantastic way to learn about how to structure a story.
What did you film? Can I interrupt there? What did you film on what subjects
kind of
and what kind of films did you make?
It was different. Frankly, Roger, it was different from one country to the other. I remember in Jakarta, I did what I thought a beautiful movie about a knife maker that was making beautiful knives. But I think that I'm more remembered for my failures. Like I did,
we all.
I did a movie once. I was in the desert and I was like without subject, because the time was very compressed, and I decided to make a reflection about documentary and subject, the relationship of the filmmaker and his subject, using beetles. The desert was filled with beetles, and I started to create a story about those beetles and my relationship with them, and how my rights to describe their life. But I know that people, when I came back, keep talking about that short film of the beetle, and the one I did about Tibet, also one that I did in Tibet about Tibetan life and their relationship over there and landscape. But those were 5. I was 20 years old, and I was making it was like very naive, but there was something beautiful about the freedom of these.
Yeah.
At the end of this process, I had a job at the National Film Board for 2 years, where I did my first short film, professional short film there, a documentary in Jamaica, and it's about culture shock. But I would say that's what is singular about my journey, is that immersion in a documentary that really changed my approach of cinema, and still today, when I'm with the film crew. When I design a shot with the cinematographer, I'm trying to always go back to that intimacy where I was just alone with the camera and not thinking about all the film crew, and just trying to find back that intimacy, that pleasure. Yeah.
Well, it certainly explains too why you're very visual when we're talking about shots, and you also are very strong in knowing how you're going to cut it. So you oftentimes have the strength and courage to say, no, we don't need to do coverage, because
it's a good comment, James, because it's true that through the way we were doing this, it was before internet, so we had to edit on paper. So it
Really?
it was really like an exercise of memory and how to do mental editing. It was, honestly, for film student, I would recommend to do this because it's like it teaches you how to design a shot. And I'm still learning today. It's just one of the great strengths of Roger to know how to design a shot according to the structure of a scene. And it's something I'm still learning. But I remember having learned a lot doing this exercise about editing. Yeah, a lot.
So after you did those, what did you do?
I thought that this podcast would be about Roger, but let's go.
Well, you can always turn it around
no.
that way. It's up to you. You can change the questions.
No, I'm joking. The thing is that after that, I did that short film, but I felt the urge to do something. The National Film Board was like an institution. For those who doesn't know, it's a governmental institution in Canada that is very well known for its animated. We see animated little short films every year at the Academy Awards, or its documentaries. A lot of very strong filmmakers from Canada were born in that institution, all of them, in fact. And I had the chance to work with some of them, being one of their assistant, and then to make my own short film. I learned a lot, but when I was there, I felt that there was a rhythm, there was something about, there's a weight of a story, and I was looking for going towards fiction and to work with people of my own age and the friends. So I left this institution and went to do rock videos, which was like a great bad idea because it's like I didn't like it. But what I loved was the ability to have an idea and to see the result 2 weeks later. At the National Film Board, you have an idea and you see the result 2 or 3 years later. It was like I could at that when you're 23 years old, it was not a rhythm that was suitable for me. So I did a few short rock videos where I learned mostly how to deal with the pressure of a film crew, how to communicate to a film crew. It has nothing to do with cinema, but at least there was the tools of cinema. And then I had the chance there at the time. There was one of the great producer in Quebec, Roger Frappier, wanted to meet the new generation of filmmaker, and he had the idea to do a feature film made out of 6 short films that will be directed by 6 different directors, but shoot by the same film crew. And I did that feature film with the 5 other directors. And it was a fantastic experience because this is the only time in my life that I had the chance to work with other directors without feeling any kind of competition. We were storyboarding together, we were editing together, we were even going on the set of the other directors, helping them as assistant. So it was, again, another part of my film school. And this movie called Cosmos was like, had a nice little critical success. And the producer at the end of this project said to all of us, in fact, if you want to do your first feature film, I'm there. I love working with you all and I would like to do it again. And I jumped on the opportunity. I mean, Roger Frappier is honestly one of the best and most influenced film producer in Canada. So it was like, and I jumped and I did my first feature. And from there, I was very lucky. I must say, I was very lucky to meet Roger. Yeah.
Denis, you had talked about film school, how you kind of learned to pick up a camera and you went on these documentaries and you were shooting. At one point, did you realize that you wanted to take the path of a director and learn story more rather than be a cameraman or go to be a cinematographer? Like,
I since the beginning I was attracted to storytelling. It was always driven by the idea of telling stories, to approach reality with a story and to try to bring something out of it, or the poetry of storytelling. So I never thought I would be a cinematographer. And very quickly, when I started to work with bigger film crew, I felt that other people far better than me to use it, to manipulate the camera or with the lighting. I was cinematographer on short films sometimes, or I did some cinematography myself, but it's not something that I was like, I felt in love with. It was always directing, always writing and directing that attracted me since the beginning.
Your work's very personal, and the way you're talking about your beginnings and your attitude to your work, it's very personal. How did that work when you started having to work with bigger crews and with cinematographers and all the rest.
But the thing is that my first movies were made with a very close friend of mine, André Turpin. That was like a kind of brother. We were raised together, and it was like, as film students. And aesthetically, we were really stimulated by each other. It's like, so that kind of relationship very early on was André shot 3 of my feature films at the beginning, and 4. In fact, I made 4 movies with him. I think that will be the key, because I feel that, like any director, I guess the relationship with the cinematographer is the most intimate and precious and important thing on a set. I mean, it's like your eyes and your movement and your rhythm, and you have to it was born in a friendship, I would say. The idea to go from being alone with a camera and then to share the camera with a friend, and to trust him,
Right.
and to realize that he was far better than me.
But it's really important then to be working with somebody that has a sort of similar sensibility then, really, that it's...
I think it's otherwise it can be very painful. Yeah, I think it's like that's the key. You have to work with someone that will be an extension. It's like a dance. There's no other way. Yeah, I don't feel like.
You don't think having somebody who thinks completely differently would push you more, or like have a different sensibility that can still add to the project, or is it too separate?
I did a movie once where I worked with someone that had a different sensibility, and it's true that I learned in some ways, but making movies is too hard. You have to have a ground. You have to there's too many elements. There's too many aspects of the film process. I feel that I learned stories of friends working with cinematographer where it clashed, and frankly, I don't feel it was productive. I feel that there's nothing more joyful than to share the camera with someone where you feel that you're spontaneously embracing a scene. There's something. It doesn't mean that you will approach the scene the same way. It doesn't mean that the other person will not bring different ideas, but it's just that the perspective on a scene, the point of view on a scene will be shared. I mean, when I work with André, when I had the chance to work with Roger, there's multiple times we approach. There was different ideas, but just sharing the same sensibility. I think I don't think I can do it other way.
I think there's a difference between sharing a sensibility and sharing the exact idea of a shot, isn't there? Exactly. You can have a conflict of ideas, but not a conflict of sensibility, if you like. If the sort of goal is the same, the kind of feel of it, the kind of tone. But I think you need to be in sync.
You gentlemen, working with directors, did it happen that you had working with directors that had different sensibilities and it was productive? Is it something that...
Well, you try and figure out the sensibility before you accept the job.
Before you go into it.
No, you do, because you can always do a script 5 different ways. So you want to meet with them and see if they're thinking of basically the same idea that you are.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I was really touched when you used the phrase "share the camera" with someone. That's a really lovely way of looking at it.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's what it is, isn't it? Yeah. I wondered if you'd like to talk a bit more about the earlier films you did in Canada and the style of those films and what you were looking for. I mean, because they're quite different, weren't they? There was Maelstrom, right, which is kind of out there, and then there's Polytechnic, which is very different, and then there's Incendie. Can you talk about them a little bit? What you were looking for?
The thing is, they have all something in common. First of all, I need to say that when I did that experience of going around the world, I made, I think, 22 or 25 short films, 5 minutes, that were edited in Montreal. And I did my best every time to do small documentaries that were quite experimental, sometimes very bad, sometimes good, but I always thought they would be very different. When I came back after all those months, I had the chance to look at them back to back. It was the first time I was looking at them with music and everything, and they all look the same. And it was like a trauma for me. And I know that every time I'm making a movie, I'm trying to do something to approach things differently. And still today, sometimes I'm making shots and I'm asking to myself, am I an automatic pilot? Because I have an urge to cut this scene this way. I have an urge to make that camera movement right now. But it's like something that is a deep intuition, but it's something that at the beginning, I think I was looking, it was honestly, frankly, I was struggling with the cinematic identity. I'm meaning that you're like trying to find your voice. And I know that my two first movies had numerous influences and they were made quite in a clumsy way, but there was always this idea in the first movie to be immersive, to try to bring the audience into an experience and not try to be as subjective as possible, to try to be inside the close to the main character's point of view. I will say that the two first movies I made, specifically the second one, Maelstrom, was quite arrogant and disconnected and was at the time the most successful things I've done. And for me, in the same time, a big failure because I felt that the movie didn't convey what I wanted to talk about. So it's like a disconnection between ideas and how I was using the cinema, the language. That's why I stopped, because after Maelstrom, I said, I'm not a filmmaker. I just want someone that wants to show off with a camera, and I can't use the language properly, and I don't know what I'm doing really. So I stopped, and I said the next time I will take the camera, it will be for something that is really meaningful, and that I will feel that I So it's true that Polytechnique, it's a movie that is aesthetically different, and for me it's a very strange project because it feels like an attempt to use different ways of storytelling and camera work.
Did you have any influences on doing that film? I mean, on the one hand, it feels, in a strange way, it's got a sort of stylization to it, but also on the other hand, it feels more akin to like Fred Wiseman or you know.
The main influence, I would say, when I was making this movie, it's true that part of it is very stylized, and that came from the study of space and that I was doing with the cinematographer at that time. And I think that's one of the, I would say, I learned so much during that movie. Now, maybe it's a movie I should do again later in my life when I'll be more in control of what I'm doing. But I will say that we were aiming to, at the time, to find the poetry that inspired us, the poetry of the movies made by a filmmaker like Michel Brault, a documentary filmmaker, and Pierre Perrault, the two filmmakers that had a big influence on me. I'm not saying my cinema has nothing to do with them, but still today, when I'm working, it's a sensibility that is very close to I was raised with, and that had a big impact on me, how to approach a kind of beautiful humility in the way they approach subjects, and the beautiful strength about natural light, which I'm not saying Polytechnique does, but it was, I think, some scenes in the movie have that kind of beauty and are closer to this idea of that kind of poetry, but other part is very stylized, you're right.
It's a very difficult film. I mean, a very difficult film to do and a very hard subject. Why in particular that? I mean, for people that don't know, it's a high school shooting, right?
It's an event that happened when I was a film student in 1989. There was what is known as the first school shooting in history. There was one event in Texas before a sniper I think in the 70s, but it was the first time that someone was getting inside an institution like a school and was shooting. And the thing is that the killer was only targeted women. And it's an event that was very horrific and really disturbing. And that was had a massive shockwave in Canada. The thing is that I was approached by a young actress that wanted to create a project in the memory of the victims and to approach the movies from the students' point of view, because the students were judged by the way they reacted when the man started to shoot, and there was a lot of judgment, a lot of it's an event that created a lot of pain everywhere. And myself, I realized that it's an event that when it happened, it was so horrific that I shut down, and I didn't went into the emotions, and I didn't explore what it meant to me, and what to be a man in a society where a man would go and target women, how misogynistic the society can be, the place of women in society, the place of women in power. And I was my two first features were about women characters. I was attracted about femininity, about to explore the place of women in society. So it felt that is a project that was put upon my shoulder, and I didn't say no. It was like for me, it was a very, very meaningful movie. It was everybody in Canada freaked out when they said we will make a movie about that, because they felt it was like a taboo subject. But I felt that there was a powerful exploration of what does it mean.
How long was it after the actual event that you were making the movie?
20 years, and it felt a big responsibility, but it's exactly the kind of movie I wanted to make, meaning the kind of subject, the kind of something that I will really make something for other people, something that will be an act of generosity and not an act of frankly, I see this movie, I haven't watched it in a long time. I feel that it's a movie that has some strength in it about where the camera is, about what it shows us to be with the students, because all the images we had seen before were from the police point of view or the safety point of view, the teachers, but not from the people who actually went through it. And it's something that, so it was a massive research. And the movie was very well received, my great relief. But I think aesthetically, we made mistakes in this movie, honestly. There's a lot of it aesthetically. We were focusing on trying to control things, and it was a mistake.
And okay, so then you moved on to Incendie. How did that come about?
So Incendie is when I stopped after Maelstrom, I said to myself, I'll take a camera again when I feel and I saw a play a few years later, 3 or 4 years later. I went out and I saw that play, Incendie, written by Wajdi Mawad, that is really a masterpiece about how anger is given from one generation to the other, and how to get rid of it. And it's a subject that I was really exploring myself at the time. And it's like as much the geography of the movie was very far away from me, as much I felt strong attraction through this project, and I got the rights myself, and I wrote the screenplay for a long period of time. As I was writing Incendie, I was offered Polytechnique, and the way the things were, I did Polytechnique first, but I was doing both movies at the same time. And I will say that Incendie is, that's where, for the very first time, I felt it was an act of trying to just follow a pure impulse with my relationship with the mise en scène and the camera, not trying to do like what I've seen before, not trying to be influenced by something else, just trying to be deeply honest with the camera and generous with the camera, and it's the first time I felt home doing Incendie. It's the first movie that I said, I don't know what the other people will think, if it's boring for them or whatever, but I feel that that's the kind of image, and that's the way I feel. I'm not through the whole movie, but there was something I feel very close. It's by far one of the closest movie I've made. And to myself, and it's something in the images, the way there's something that I feel that there's a parenthood, I will say, between Incendie, the style of Incendie, and Prisoners, and Sicario, and Blade Runner. For me, its movies are like linked.
Yeah.
stylistically, and it's movies where I feel that the camera work. There's something where I feel home. I don't know how to say that otherwise.
Yeah.
That I feel.
I also think, I mean, there's a link with each of them that you're delving into something deeper about, okay, pretentious, the human condition. I mean, you're dealing with anger, loss, and regret. That seems to be what draws you to films before the whole visual interpretation. Or am I wrong?
No, you're right, Roger. Because that's the way I was able to go back to cinema. It was it was by the intimate link with my intimate link with the subject, and then I know how to direct. Then I know how to talk to actors. Then I know how to interact with the cinematographer. I think if I don't have that link, I'm useless as a film director. I wish I would be different, be rich, and I would be.
No.
You don't wish that.
No.
It's true. It's like, and that's why after my two first feature film, where I didn't add that connection, when I didn't add that, I was approaching the cinema in a more, I would say, maybe playful way, but it was more a superficial way than my two first feature, and I had to stop. It was not. It was like a sterile way of making cinema. Mm-hmm. So it has to have a deep meaning and a deep. Is it the same for you, Roger? When you work with a project, and you have to find something like where you connect? I always feel that. I think so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why I love working with you, because I mean, we do have a similar sensibility and a feel for things, I think. I mean, and not just mean visually, I mean actually the content, Yeah. I mean, you can't put
that much energy.
Yeah, you can't put yourself into it unless you kind of feel for the story and the characters and what the film's got to say. That's what I feel
makes
anyway.
it worthwhile, because otherwise it's just a slog.
It's just images on a screen. I don't care about just making images. I mean, in my own work, even when I'm just taking still photographs. I mean, I've only probably taken 60 still photographs I like in my life, because nothing really kind of connects. You know what I mean? You're really searching for something that connects, that actually makes you feel something. You know what I mean?
Roger, do you feel sometimes, do you have a feeling of repetition sometimes with the language when you work? Or you always, because it's something that I feel with you that is like, because you have definitely, of course, a style. But I feel that each shot you have a way to. I always feel that you're doing the shot like if it was the first time you were doing it, and still it's part of a real style, a real approach. And I was wondering how you feel inside you.
Yeah, I don't know. It always does feel like the first time. Really, I mean, it is, because everything you do, it's different, isn't it? I mean, otherwise. I mean, I've told this before. I once went to an interview with a director, and they said, okay, I'm doing this film. I want it to look just like Shawshank Redemption. You know what I mean? So there's
couldn't get out of the door fast enough.
You know what I mean? Because the image comes from the script and comes from you and comes from all the other things that are happening around you at the time, doesn't it? It comes from sitting and working on storyboards, and then on the day with the actors, and you don't know where it's going. I find that's what. I mean, you have an idea where you want to go, but you don't really know what the shot is and where it's going, the look of the film, until it's actually there and happening, and all those people are together with the actors and the sets, and then suddenly the camera rolls, and you think, oh, that's what it's really going to look like. You know what I mean? That's what's so exciting, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, definitely. Yes. There's chaos of life. Always brings something.
Yeah. But I certainly couldn't work on a film if I didn't connect to the story, the subject somehow,
But did you, because me as a director, I'm like, if I like, as an example, if I work with you, I'll be in a position where I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna be in a position where every shot, every day, I'm gonna learn something about filmmaking. I'm in a learning process working with you, and it's like a very rewarding and exciting. You do you have that feeling that you're still learning, or are you more?
Yes.
I was just going to say, you could turn that around. I could be saying that to you, of course, couldn't I? Obviously.
Right now, I'm doing a VFX on Dune, and I found myself talking about light and asking for things, and I'm like, I know it's Roger. I know that I can do things, or I know that I realize how much sometimes the amount of things I learn is insane. Yeah. I'm not saying I don't know if you will agree when you're going to see the thing. but it's just that I know that it's a sensibility towards light that I strongly increased a lot being in you and working on Blade Runner, and it was really a very, very formative experience. Very, very to design the movie from the storyboards until the very end by your side. It's insane the amount of things I learned. Insane.
Well, I said again, I could say exactly the same. I mean, it was an insane experience. And, let's be honest, it had its ups and downs, but it was pretty amazing experience. I mean, yeah, life experience. Let's go back a little bit. How did Prisoners kind of occur after Incendie? What attracted you to it? And how did you feel about working in America? Can you talk about that, the variation?
I didn't have the desire to work in Hollywood because I was afraid of the Hollywood system. I was afraid I had heard all those stories, and in Canada we don't have a lot of money, but we have total freedom. And for me, it was something that was very precious. And here you cannot make a lot of movies. So you have to. It's a system that is based on government funds. So you have to wait for your turn. It's a bit a long process, but still, when you make the movie, you're total in command. But after Polytechnique, when the movie was shown in Cannes Film Festival, and then I started to have receive requests from agencies in Hollywood, and I said and I didn't know who to work with. I didn't know. And at one point, I remember I choose people that by intuition saying, and just saying to myself, if ever I want to work with an actor later, maybe it could be useful. And they started to send me screenplays, and I was impressed by the quality of the screenplays. I was like trying to write myself on my corner. I was trying to write. I was like, I felt that there was another level of mastery, and one of the first that was sent to me was Prisoners. And I remember reading it. There was things in it that I deeply love and things that I hate. I was like, I'm not sure it's a project. First of all, I was not seeing myself doing a dark thriller like that. I was not, but there was something about it, and the way this depiction of cycle of violence and the ambiguity of where. It was putting the audience in relationship with this ambiguity towards violence, and what will you do when it's come close, and the honesty of that. There was something kind of honest about it but I put it on the back, and I was doing Incendie at the time, I think, and I was like, but it was keep coming back, and it was very strange. I read tons of screenplays, but that's the one. And at one, I said to myself, what's happening with that? And I met the producer. And when I met them, I was saying, the gentleman at Alcon, I said to myself, I was invited into LA, and I said, I will go there like a cultural experience. Once in my life, I will meet the famous Hollywood executive, and I will be in the same room, and I will experience that, and it will be interesting. And so I had nothing to lose. So I was very honest. I remember them looking at me with eyes, and I was saying how I will approach the story, what was important for me in that story, what it meant to me, and what I didn't like at all, and what will the strength and how I will do it. And I shook all their hands, and then I went back in the plane and saying to myself, it was a nice adventure. And I remember just before the plane taking off, my agent calling me, saying to me, hey, you got your first And honestly, I was like, when they said to me, it's your first $50 million movie, I freaked out because I never asked what will be the budget. I don't think I would have gone to the meeting if I knew how much money that they were ready to put in that. I was like, no, but it's. I went into the project I had very straightforward. It started with a very straightforward relationship. First of all, my English was even worse than right now. So my vocabulary was very bold, let's say. So it was when I was expressing myself, it was black and white. There was not a lot of nuances.
No gray.
No gray. And the producer felt very comfortable with that approach.
Thank goodness.
And first I was very inspired by the story, but I was deeply moved by the artist I will work with. First, you, Roger. The fact that you came to the project. I remember again a meeting where I was going to meet with cinematographer, and someone calling me, asking me if I would agree to meet an additional cinematographer, and it was you. And I thought it was a joke at the beginning. I think it's like so. It's no, but it's just that. For me, I went to do Prisoners, one single experience again, saying to myself, it's an insane chance. One of my biggest dreams as a filmmaker was to work with a master cinematographer, work with someone that I admire, and just to have the chance to work with a master, just to have the chance to share ideas and to interact with someone that is has a knowledge of cinema that is far bigger than mine. And just for me, it was very selfishly, it was, and Prisoner became that gift. And I was like very excited, but I was like, I remember I brought on this adventure also the production designer, Patrice Vermette from Montreal, and a friend of mine. And I remember when the plane took off to go to do Prisoner, we said to ourselves, we might get back to Montreal in 3 weeks. They would maybe kick us out, but at least it will work right. And to my great surprise, Prisoners became probably the most beautiful film experience, where I felt that the production team, I really felt honestly that they were trying their best to give me all the tools and the elements needed to make
very
the movie.
supportive.
And I never felt respected like that as a filmmaker. And I felt also, I remember showing them the director's cut, and they just shook my hands and said, "That's it, you're done. It's you." Yeah, I was thinking that there will be struggling and struggles, and that it will be. No, it was like, honestly, it was a very. Of course, there was challenges, there was difficulties, but on the project itself, I came back home saying, "Wow! First of all, I met great artists. I learned like never before. I felt I was able to be myself with the camera, keep my identity alive." Martin Scorsese had warned me saying, "Try to stay intact when you go." And I came back and I felt, to my big surprise, I felt totally in love with the American film industry. I was in love. I was in love with the film cinema, American cinema as an audience. But to work with Americans, I was afraid. It was like I'm still there.
You were really lucky that your first experience was with Andrew and Broderick, because they were so supportive, and they are so supportive as producers, which was great. And remember how we ended up shooting 2 endings, one that we liked, one that they wanted for safety, and they said whichever tested higher, they would put in, and they stood by their word.
Yeah, and in fact, it was not higher, but if equal. They would choose mine. They in fact, they didn't change the edit, but the ending is true. There was 2 endings because they felt that my idea, which I think was closer to the screenplay, by the way, was too much depressing or not commercial enough or something. And
certainly dark, I think.
Yes. And
which is why we liked it.
And I remember we tested both, and Andrew came to me and he said, they scored equally. Maybe yours is better, so we will go with yours. And it was a beautiful experience.
That was an interesting project I felt when obviously we had met that time at the Academy.
For Incendie, when you got nominated for a foreign film.
We'd seen Incendie. And it was only when I heard that you would be coming to America to do the film Prisoners, our agent sent the script over. And I think if I'd read that script, not knowing you were going to direct it, I would have really had maybe doubts about working on it.
It could have gone anyway.
Yeah, because don't you feel, I mean, you read it and obviously you come into it, but for somebody like myself, cinematographer, reading it, wondering how a director would go with that project. I mean, it could have gone very kind of gothic, but knowing your work, I felt, I thought Incendie was an incredible movie. I still do. And knowing that was your sensibility and having just had those brief conversations with you, I mean, I knew where you were going right then without you having to really explain it.
It was a delicate project I think it was the same with Sicario too, where it was where morality, you have a responsibility as a filmmaker about what you're saying about reality, and it's like those projects were dealing with shadows, it's like, but what was that was attracted me to these projects, and I think that's the next movie we've done together, Sicario, is again one of my most beautiful cinema experience, because I felt that it for several reasons. One of them was I felt that the budget and the movie were just right. That we were making good decisions, and it was a nice puzzle to make.
Yeah, I remember on Sicario when we were shooting in that house where they found all the bodies, and you looked at one point and there was a stream of light coming in the window and there was the dust going in, and you said, let's shoot the dust, which reoccurs every so often in the movie. Did that just come to you on the day?
It's a good question, James. The thing is that I know that I was a very... all filmmakers are dreamers. So I spent days reading books when I was a kid or watching dust floating in the sunlight. For me, it was a way to feel, to bring a reality close to me, I think, to something, an image that is linked with my childhood. I felt was like a good way to. But I think the idea of the shadow coming in front of the window is something that was designed in storyboards, I think, if my memory is good.
Mm-hmm.
But just wondering about Sicario, what is your best memory about it, and what do you regret about it? I mean, it was interesting that the opening of the film changed, didn't it, in the cut, for instance?
My best memory of it, I will say that the joy. I remember going with you on the bridge between El Paso and Juarez, to cross that bridge and to see the size of it. It's like a monster of a bridge, and feeling overwhelmed by the scope of what it meant to shoot a scene that will happen in such a place. And I think that to find a way to design a piece of a set, use a helicopter shot, the way we were able to reconstruct that reality and make it tangible, real, and that the whole pieces together, that whole process of I think that for me is something that I felt still pretty excited. The idea of shooting in total darkness with you too. It's something that
that was kind of funny.
Yeah, I will remember
that was funny.
All my life. I feel that the thing I will regret, I will say that sometimes I change some dialogues too much, I think, or there's scenes, the scene in the bar I feel is a little bit weaker, because I went from something more spontaneous with the actors, and I remember really on that day I was sick. The thing as a director, when you shoot, you have to be in the same way as for a cinematographer, I guess. It's like you have to be at your best every day, and it's not true. Someday you're bad, and you remember those days are very painful. And the bar scene, I remember I was doing fever or something. I was sick, and I was not. I felt that I was not able to give the best of myself, and I was rewriting dialogues with the actors on the spot. And I remember they were doing their best and they did a good job, but it's just I feel that it could have been a bit more. There was something, maybe not achieved there in that scene. That's I would say, yeah. But
Do you? I mean, we've done a lot of prep together, both, well, first on Prisoners and Sicario, we did a lot of storyboarding, and on Blade Runner, even more storyboarding than on either of those. Do you like having a lot of prep? Do you like having kind of a roadmap of what you're going to do? And how do you relate to that on the set with the actors?
The thing is that at the beginning of when I was making film earlier, I was really in love with the spontaneity of the camera, and I was really in love with coming from documentary to approach to go on set in the morning and the more I maybe because the project I'm doing are more and more complex technically too, and there's more and more design and more decisions so I love to more and more to prep. I love more and more to storyboard, and that love of storyboarding just increased also before I was doing storyboards only for scenes that are at technical challenges, like in the incendie, the bus attack, or things like that, when you need to explain to a crew when there are stunts or things like that. But the more it goes, the more I love and more to storyboard more and more to make sure that the cinematic language is constant, to make sure that there's so many decisions that can be made early on, and that it's a relief for me, and that I can more focus on the actors when all those decisions are made. And it's something that I felt also you were having made a few movies with you. I felt was a process that you really love too, and I just increased. And movies like Blade Runner and Dune has been entirely storyboarding, and it's just a process that I love just more and more. The amount of decision you can make at storyboards is fantastic to make.
But you still have the ability to change on the day, right? I mean, when you get into the set with the actors.
It's the key is to be prepared and have a plan, and then to throw it in the basket.
Yes.
And then of course, how many times Roger and I walk on set, and I do the blocking, and suddenly an actor come with something that was not, instead of sitting on the chair, he stand by the desk, and we are both spontaneously inspired by their position that are totally different. So when I do a blocking with actors, I don't, most of the time, I like first to have a very raw and spontaneous blocking that doesn't follow the plan, grosso modo. So if there's something that is better that can come up, but of course it's super important. That's why I insist most of the time to have real sets with real environments, so the actors can be inspired on the day. And honestly, I still think that the best thing that I've done in my life most of the time are ideas that came on set in the morning. As an example, I remember the torture scene we made with Benicio del Toro. The way he came in the morning with this idea of standing in front of the bad guy, standing in front of him and trying to provoke him in a way that I will have never thought of, and it really changed the scene, and we reconstruct the scene about this Benicio del Toro idea. And for me, those are my favorite moments. Yeah, I will say this, Roger. You asked me a question about one of my favorite moments of Sicario. I will say that it's probably the final scene between Benicio and Emily. Why? Because it's a scene that was totally written differently in the movie. And for several reasons, I decided to rewrote it, and I was deeply influenced by an idea from Benicio, which was the idea of the letter. Then I was like really influenced by this idea of Emily, who decided to sit during the scene, sitting at the table. It was not at all the way I was seeing the scene. And then by the way you approach it with light, what created the scene for me, where Benicio is backlit and her, she's like evenly lit. Like there's something about the conflict of the movie that is expressed through light in that moment that I thought became from total teamwork, and it's by far one of my favorite scenes of the movie. And it's a scene that was constructed entirely from everybody's ideas. It's not. I cannot say my biggest joy as a director is when I feel that I brought everybody in a place where everybody brings the best of themselves. If I can say, it's a bit arrogant, but I feel that I feel something like it's more like a channel than something. And then when this happens, sometimes there's a lot of strength. The beautiful cinematic idea. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's also probably, I've said before, I think that's my favorite scene in the film.
I know, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because it's so simple. And I think that as you say, Benicio brought so much to it as well, didn't he? That sort of minimalism about what he was doing. And sometimes the simplicity is so much better than the script. There was a lot of dialogue in the script, I remember.
Yeah, it was it was a very different scene, and I'm sure that if Taylor Sheridan has directed it himself, it would have been different and probably very interesting. But it's like I felt it's a scene that I'm proud of, and that it's for me it's cinema, and it's like the way. That simplicity of the language you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh, it's interesting that we're both talking about a scene that's two people sitting at a table in a kitchen on a set that cost about 10 grand, Meanwhile, there's all the rest of the film, people on the bridge at El Paso and the traveling through Mexico City and the whole bit. But we're talking about one little scene of two people sitting at a little kitchen table. It's funny, isn't it? Yeah.
There's an intensity and there's a equilibrium between the acting and the way the actors are moving into light. That is so strong. It's one of my. I think it's probably one of my favorite scenes we've done together, Roger. That scene is like,
Yeah, it's funny when those things work. It's the little things, isn't it? I always say, I just love photographing a human face, and then when you've got somebody like Emily and Benicio, that's quite something.
Denis, I think one of the best things about Prisoners and Sicario is how well you build tension. It's not fancy, it's not too drawn out, but you do such an excellent job at keeping somebody guessing, but then pulling the trigger at the right moment and building the tension and then having it come to. Like, talk about how you kind of go about designing those in your head or story points and making sure the script really hits, whether it's in the edit or while you're directing the actors or just tension moments?
It's a very good question, and I thank you. And then my answer will be very embarrassing. I remember when I did my first professional short film in Jamaica, there's a scene where a character is driving into a neighborhood that he feels unsafe. And I remember friends coming out of the theater at the end of the screening saying to me, "Man, that was tense." And I said, "Really?" I was like, I was so happy it worked out. The cinema is very powerful, but it's honestly purely an intuitive process of how to create, where the tension rises in the shot, the length and the rhythm that you need to incorporate in the shot. And it's still today, when I try to intellectualize it or try to find a recipe, or I always come frankly with the boring answers, and the truth is I don't know. I just say there's something about that. It's just a matter of using when maybe I'm someone that is dealing on a daily basis with a lot of anxiety, and it's something that I would think about your question, but it's every time I'm being asked, I feel that when I try to explain, it's at the end of the day, it's a matter of a sensibility, I think.
I think that's what I was going to say. I think it's sensibility, and you have a uncanny knack of knowing when a wide shot will hold, and when you hold it so long, it starts to mean something else. It's no longer just an establishing shot. It becomes something else. And if the camera's moving in slowly or you're pushing into a tree, it actually means much more than actually visually what's in the frame.
Something you can't even put into words.
There's one particular scene in Sicaria that people ask me a lot about, which is the scene between Josh and Emily after they come back across the border and all the SUVs pulled to a halt. They get out and they have that argument.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all played in the wide shot. And I've said the wide shot was only the shot we had made for the convoy pulling up and them getting out.
In the storyboard.
In the storyboards. And I thought when we set it up, we said, okay, we'll think about coverage if we need it after. And you let that take play during that conversation, that argument, and kind of small figures in the distance. And I remember after you were happy with the take, I said to you, shall we go in for coverage? Should we do overs? And you said, no. I think you said, no, if we did that, I might be forced to use it. We moved inside, right? We moved inside. And can you tell us a little bit about your thought process there?
I think that there's a dictatorship of the close-ups in the cinema. More the cinema evolves, the more we are getting closer and closer. And I think it's beautiful. I love the power of close-ups, but there's something about seeing the characters and the landscape and the relationship with space. And I remember I had done a shot like that in Incendie, where I shot both characters, the twins. They come out at the beginning of the movie. There's a brother and a sister, and they just learn a terrible news, an incredible news. They have a father alive somewhere, and they cannot believe, and a brother. And it's a news that is so big, and I wanted to express their vulnerability and how they feel small in the world. And I remember doing that wide shot, and I said, that's it. It's there. Everything is there. And the next thing I've done, I said to the cinematographer, knowing deep in my heart that I got everything I needed, I said, let's do coverage. And I hated myself. Every shot after that, I was doing the shot. I said, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I'm a coward right now. I don't follow my instinct. I know I don't need to do this. And it's a movie that was shot with not a lot of money. So it was like a precious time, and I felt that I didn't know where to go with the camera after. It was a mess, and I was angry at myself, and I said, never again, never. When I would feel that feeling so when it happened on Sicario, which in fact was like a similar moment where a character would feel that going back to America after being in Mexico, being in a relationship with the American landscape, with that flag on top of them, and the first take, I remember, I said, my God, the way her body moves in space is so beautiful. She's expressing so much things right now that will disappear in the close-up. I felt that it felt everything is there, and I followed the promise. I said, that's what the decision was made. But it's just, there's something about vulnerability of a character in the landscape that cannot translate in a close-up, and it's like... I thought the shot was cinematically meaningful, seeing all the group of men going back inside the building and leaving her behind, and there was something quite powerful.
I think it's very interesting too, like talking about that. And Roger, if you remember, we've talked about before, people always asking for something more from meaning behind a shot, or like, no, there must be some reason why you did it. And Denis, like, it's about, I think a lot of times as a filmmaker, getting enough confidence to trust your instincts and understand where something's coming from. And sometimes you do search for more meaning and themes and whatnot, but understanding that you have to trust yourself sometimes too, and not always need a deeper reason to do it.
Yeah, and take risk. And with Greg Fraser, we developed an expression. He said that when Cortez landed in America, he burned the boat, so the guys will not come back. So that's what the expression. Let's burn the boat. You burn the boat. Yeah. We burn the boat. I mean, we just go and you take the risk of There was another reason why I did that also, is that it's because I knew that we will be out of a car, we will be inside a car for 12 minutes being in close up on Emily Blunt, and I thought that it made total sense cinematically to open at that moment, like suddenly the character is like having a wave of oxygen, a lot of oxygen coming to her and being able to release the anger. So it felt more proper to do that in the wide shot.
Yeah. I think, to Matt's point, though, you have to trust that your relationship with the shot is going to be the same. That is the way it's going to translate to the audience, right? You look at a shot like that, you see those little figures. It's almost like leaving that argument in a private moment or something. Anyway, whatever your relationship is to the shot and what you feel from it, that's, you hope, is what the audience is going to feel. So it's really an instinctive thing, isn't it?
Totally. And there's also something about the characters of Emily Blunt being left behind and feeling powerless and feeling, how can I say, naked in this landscape. There's something that I think was proper there. About the tension, and I will say that when you said, Roger, that Polytechnique, there was like different camera style or something was very aesthetic sometimes. It's true. I think it's like, I would say it was very experimental movie. As a director, there was like, I was not conscious of that. As I was shooting, we were using bullet squibs. And sometimes because of the amount of extra, I remember a shot I was doing, shooting an actress beside a Xerox machine, and we had to for several reasons, let the action roll for 2 minutes or a minute and a half before the actual squib, because for continuity and I remember the amount of what was happening, the tension that was rising in that shot, that it was not planned. It was like a pre-roll of so I started in that movie to let the camera roll before the action, and a long time after, sometimes letting it, just because there was something, the shot sometimes started to mean something different because I was letting it rolling after. And the meaning, there was a weight or a tension it's all started there, how to use time and where to stretch. And I was starting to play with that live when I was doing Polytechnique. So to answer to your question about tension, sometimes it's something that has to be done as you're shooting. You feel it as you're shooting. It's not in the editing room, I would say.
It's interesting. The first shot in Apocalypse Now was a second unit shot of an explosion in the palm trees. And the camera was running for, I don't know, a minute or 2 minutes before the effects went off. And they've used that in the front shot. Just the sound of the helicopters coming and,
I strongly believe in that, frankly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about Blade Runner? Your process on Blade Runner? What is it with you and science fiction? You seem to have now turned to science fiction. Are you ever going to do anything else?
I didn't turn to science fiction. I went away from it. It's very different. I was like in love with science fiction as a kid. There was something about because of the reality around me. I was born in a very small village where I won't go into details, but the thing is that there was something about the dream quality of science fiction as a kid that I was very attracted to, and the fact that you were able to approach subject matter that was quite sometimes very dark or very controversial. And in science fiction, you can approach those subjects because you're not. It's in a different context. So it's like I was always dreaming to do science fiction, but science fiction is not something I can't really do at home because it means bigger budget. So when I came to Los Angeles, when people started to ask me, what would you really would love to do as you are here? I would love to do. I would love to try to do a science fiction movie one day. I'm happy to talk about Blade Runner with you both, the three of you. Sorry. But it's a movie that I was not able to watch again. It takes a time before being able to digest. to make peace with it's very. I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I make a movie, there's a lot of deep joy, pain, anger linked with the process. And when it's finished, it's just like, okay, it's done, and it takes me years before I'm able to watch it again and to see the movie for what it is truly. And so I'm not there yet with Blade Runner, but I will say that
we know what you mean. Yeah.
And I will say that for me, that is something that is very singular about this film experience was to storyboard the movie with you, Roger and James, very early on, to bring you in the process of the creative process very early on. Like I don't think I ever done that with a cinematographer like that before, and it was a big joy to dream together about the movie, because what we storyboarded, we rewrote the movie, a lot of things together, we designed a lot of things together, we dream about the architecture, about the textures, about the atmospheres, about the way we will lit the movie, about the logic of things. There's a lot of things that was, and it's still to this day, it's by far one of my favorite moment of the film process was storyboarding Blade Runner. That was really for me a moment that there was so much freedom there, and it was like to share that. It was awesome.
It was great too, because to have the amount of time just to be able to think slowly, not have to come to decisions every day, but just to go through all the possibilities and then figure out what it was.
I think that sorry, Roger. I think that I really love also about that film was I felt there was a kind of equilibrium between very old cinematic and CGI. To use the way you approach atmosphere, creating those landscape. Probably my favorite sets in Blade Runner are the ones that don't exist. Beautiful desert, infinite desert that you designed with the atmosphere and in a stay on stage. For me, it's something that it brought a lot of. I really love when cinema is an equilibrium between very very old tricks and high-end technology.
How do you feel about CG? I mean, can you talk a bit about your love for having three-dimensional sets and actors in real spaces?
The thing is that I experienced it a few times, is when you are in a virtual environment, your relationship with the angles, and even if you try to predicts that you are very well prepared, that you are still, the ideas are still, the design of the shot are bound to what is in front of you, which is the actor, and you are not in relationship with the same way with space. You don't anticipate what the ceiling will look like, and there's a different. I feel that strongly, that it's like I'm old-fashioned. I need reality. I like to, and it's a thing that I will try to fight for until the end, because I feel that it's not true that you have the same inspiration, and that the actor or the cinematographer or myself will come with the same idea if there's nothing around us. So it's like it's numerous time in my life I had the proof that the idea comes sometimes just a bit like you said, James. There's dust floating in a sun ray, and it's the bird of a shot. It's like but that you have to see it somewhere before it's coming from reality. I mean, so for me, CG is great for set extension to make a impossible vehicle to fly, things like that. But it always needs some ground, real place. In fact, at the end of the day, it needs nature. I think there's nothing. I think Godard said the biggest strength for a filmmaker, the biggest ally is nature, and I still believe that too. Is that you need nature on your side, and you cannot emulate nature. It's something that you need to dance with. You cannot bring it out of nowhere. It's like, yeah, that's what I think.
That's well put.
Was it hard for you to come from, I don't know how much CG was on Prisoners or Sicario, if like intermittently, but was it hard to go onto a set with a much bigger budget and deeply based in, or having CG throughout it and have to learn all that? Was it a big learning curve?
The thing is that when I was younger, I witnessed filmmaker from own friends of mine that struggled when they try to make movies for certain reasons. They try to go from a $5 million movie to a 35 or 50 million, and spent years because they didn't have the firepower or the knowledge or the experience to do that. And when I choose projects in my life, it was always because I was able to, there was something, a deep connection or something deeply inspiring for me about what the screenplay was talking about, but also the size of it. So it was like steps. I would have never done Blade Runner after I saw Z. I've done it after, I've done 4 feature films in between that were stepped that. So and I will have not been able to do Dune before Blade Runner. It's all like there's a logical that I don't have a career plan, but I have a safety net under. I'm choosing projects that I know that will are that I can master technically, that I can do technically. So it's like that's what I'm gonna say. I was ready when I did Blade Runner. I thought I was ready to do it. Yeah, because I had done Arrival just before and Sicario, and there was a fair amount of VFX in Sicario to reconstruct that border. There was and I think it's important. I would not myself. I would not be able. Some people are able to do it. Me, I'm not. I would not be able to go from making my first feature to making Blade Runner my second feature. I'll be dead right now. I would be. Yeah.
Do you think after Dune you might do something that's not science fiction?
Frankly, I'm definitely I'm dreaming of doing. It will be healthy for me to do something small. Seriously, I think to go back. Like my daughter said, do Enemy the explanation. No, but to do
very
smaller,
good.
it will be great to go back in the something of the size of Sicario or something where it's more. Where I'm not having to dream about the design of a car, the design of a wallet or a gun for months before shooting it, where I can just embrace reality for what it is. That I would love to go back there. But I have I have few other. I deeply love science fiction, yeah. But no, I'll go back to reality, James, to answer to your question. Yeah, definitely for my mental sanity, it would be good. When, of course, we both share the love of the big screen. We both share the love of cinematic experience, and you made a lot of jokes about it sometimes about my iPhone. But it's to know, to people who doesn't know, it's just that Roger was traumatized because I had a thin red line from Terrence Malick on my iPhone. And he thought it was like horrific. Me, I thought it was cool because it was like having a little notebook and it was having the movie with me. It's not the same. But the thing is saying that I want to fight for the big screen. In the same time, to be very honest, I realized that a lot of my big cinema experience, actually, I've been on television. I discovered 2001: A Space Odyssey on television. And I realized later that I discovered Blade Runner on television. I discovered a lot of movies that were massive influence, massive traumatic experience, or massive, most of Ingmar Bergman, what I discovered on VHS. I mean, it's like, and still, these movies had a massive impact.
Yeah.
So all that debate about the size of the screen, sometimes I see. Because I'm a filmmaker and I love the cinematic, but still, how do you feel about that?
I'm with you, really. I mean, I love the experience of being in a cinema with an audience, but I think it's the film's more important than that people see them. And if the future people are going to watch movies on television, that's fine too. I agree with you. I think most of the films that I remember from my childhood were from watching them on television, so not cinema experiences. But
I'm almost obligated to ask the smartphone question of platforms like Quibi or people publishing original content that's now going smaller and smaller. And so, if it's the future, what do you guys think about that? Having content go straight to a phone?
But the thing is that it's a very delicate subject matter. It's definitely, at the end of the day, cinema is an immersive experience, but again, I would say that in my home, I'm trying to have the biggest screen as possible. If I'm going to I love that there's nothing like the theatrical experience. It's the ultimate experience, and it will stay the ultimate experience. But I don't know how. I know that people who watch Roma, Alfonso Cuarón Roma, in a theater had a very different experience of people who watch it on an iPad. The movie was designed to be to the length of the shots. It was designed to discover details. The way the shots are designed is to immerse yourself in an environment and to have the time to embrace little details and to be touched by the light and the time passing by, which I don't think you can experience on a small screen. You don't have that. So it's like, I don't think that where I'm going is that if you shoot for an iPhone, it's a different movie. The relationship with the pacing, with the depth, you cannot do wide shots. It won't have the same impact on an iPhone than on a big screen for sure. The shot of Sicario we're talking about probably makes no sense on an iPhone, but in a cinema is relevant because you see the facial expression. You see still, even in a wide shot, you still see details that on an iPhone won't. And I definitely, the way I cut films is for the big screen. Not for, I know my films are all in a way that they are made in an old-fashioned way for big screens, not for, and the reverse, I'm always traumatized when I see a movie that has been cut for YouTube's on a big screen. You feel it. You don't have the time to, you just have a blast of shots that you cannot appreciate or being influenced by. Your brain cannot process because it's too fast, because it has been cut for a small screen. You feel it. It's a trend.
So I was speaking with my brother the other day, and the only reason I'm asking is because we were talking about Denis, how it was important for you to start realizing thematically and to say something in your films. And he made a point that he was talking to a friend of his about Castaway, and he said, I thought there was a ton of symbolism and a lot of themes going on in Castaway. And his friend said, oh, really? I thought it was just about a guy on an island. And his point was that a good director can say something much more than just that's in the story. And, for some people, they may see the story as what's just presented to them with the narrative and the screenplay as simple. And then other people will take it to that next level and really see more meaning in it. How important is it for you to have that, symbolism or have themes in it? And how did you develop that relationship to understand and present themes in a deeper way than just something?
But what you describe is cinema. I mean, it's like the art of cinema, an image that you create an image that has a second meaning or a third meaning. And I did that. Do I succeed doing that? Sometimes I wish I was able to do that in every images. No, some filmmakers are able to do that fluently in all their. It's an art form that it's very complex but it's the goal. The goal is to create when I say an image, it's not something. It's something you capture. It's what you don't see with the camera. That the poetry of what you're shooting that has a different meaning. A bit. A friend of mine said they gave a good example. It's like the priest who raised the bread in his hand, saying that's the Christ. I don't know how do you say that in English. Body of the Christ, it's a piece of bread that he holds, but it's supposed to be the Christ. That's cinema. That's the idea of and that's the deep joy. I mean, of some of my movies, I succeed to make one image in the movie that is a real cinema. The rest is Others are there more, but I feel that's the ultimate goal. I mean, it's like a good film is a film that you can see, as you rightly said, for the strength of the story, and then you can go into the character behaviors and to the politics of what it means, and then to a deeper level. And it's like when you succeed, it's the quest of a lifetime to do that for me. But that's cinema, what you described for me.
But there's also times when people will come up and they'll have read something completely different in it. Oh, that scene, I particularly like that you put him in in a blue shirt, which shows the coldness of his heart or something, and never was that particularly thought of. So it's always interesting to me to see interpretations come up that we hadn't really thought of at the time.
Well, you also wonder if those things, though, are something that comes intuitively to a director or whoever on the set,
right,
that actually that meaning is there, but they're not consciously aware of of creating it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a balance. I think that it's like definitely how many times I read a word from a student on one of my project, and they see things that I was. But it's true that at one point I feel a producer once said to me that when you make a movie, it's like you're like a fisherman, and in your net you grab fish sometimes that are the idea is to make a beautiful net, and when the net there will be fishes that you will catch that are not supposed to be there, but you catch them because you made the net, so it's like I think at the end of the day is the goal is to try to be able to control as much as possible all the elements of the movie, as you said, rightly said, James, the every aspect, aesthetic aspect, the colors and everything, and but there's always something that slip out of your attention and that will be seen by others it's a quest. And my dear friends, to see you both, it was it's less entertaining than seeing Roger doing a barbecue, but
oh, we know that's for sure.
I'm getting better.
Yeah. Soon in the near future, hopefully, it will happen again.
Thanks for listening. If you want more information and further discussion, check out the forums at www.rogerdeakins.com. Becoming a member is free, and you can ask follow-up questions there. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast for more new questions and topics. Also, check us out on Instagram at team.deakins. See you next time.